So I want to tell you just briefly some background on the situation. Right now, there are between 1.5 and 2 million Iraqis living in Syria. Most of them have arrived there in the last 2 years as the civil society really fell apart in the last couple of years. It was slowly taking place since the invasion of 2003. And altogether, outside the country, there are 2.5 to 3 million. So roughly 10% of Iraq's population right now has fled the country. Inside the country, there are about 2.5 million displaced, although that number is just a minimum. And when I spoke to the United Nations International Organization on Migration, they said the number should be half again higher, because this minimum is just the people who are registering, the most desperate, who are in hope of assistance. And they said their own staff in Baghdad, half of them are displaced and they're not registered. So we're probably looking at 3.5, maybe 4 million displaced inside the country. So roughly 1 in 5 Iraqis has fled their home. Right now, this is the largest unfolding refugee crisis in the world, and one of the largest ever. Yet at the same time, it's received extraordinarily little coverage. Just to tell you a little bit about the girl who you're looking at, she was one of the girls that I got to know there. She's 9 years old, and her family lived in Baghdad. Their house was hit by rocket-propelled grenades from one of the militias that are now fighting for control of Iraq. Her older sister was killed. Her brother, who's 21, was taken and tortured with electric cables to his head. So now he speaks in babble, and he is violent unless they keep him medicated. And her mother had a kind of stroke and has been paralyzed for the last 2 years, lying on a mat in their apartment because of the shock of what happened. So this is actually not a really unusual story. I was really surprised by the number of people who have endured extreme trauma. I arranged to go to the border crossing. It's about 4 hours outside Damascus, the border between Syria and Iraq. And this is in August, when 60,000 people a month were coming into Syria from Iraq. Now, this is very much a middle-class exodus. These are the people who know how to go about getting passports, can have the resources to get out. 50% of the refugees have some kind of post-secondary education. These are people who are doctors, accountants, engineers, professors, filmmakers, writers, and at the same time, right now they're fleeing pretty much with just their families. A couple of years ago, they were able to sell their homes, sell their belongings, but now most of them are leaving on a very short notice and just bringing their kids and any cash that they can carry. Most of them also told me that they don't believe that they can ever go back to Iraq. Their houses have been occupied by other families from different sects, or their houses have been destroyed, and too many dark things have happened for them to go back. This was my first roommate, Mohammed, when I first arrived in Damascus. He's 24. He used to be a male model in Baghdad. Again, he's from the middle class, and he left when a letter arrived at his family home telling him that if he didn't leave, he would be killed. He's also gay, and that is why he was specifically targeted, but these letters are common. Most people I talk to receive some kind of letter like this. He told me that, he said, you're not going to find an Iraqi family who hasn't had a friend or family member killed or maimed, and I didn't, actually. This is a good friend of mine I got to know while I was there, and I spent a lot of time at her place in the suburbs of Damascus. She used to be a city councilor in Baghdad, and she was the first girl in her tribe to ever get a university education. And for her, knowledge is the most powerful thing. And it really bothered her to watch the children who come from a country that was once the most educated in the Middle East, with almost no illiteracy, go back to a state where 90% of the refugee kids are not in school because they've missed too many years, or Syrian schools have 60 to 70 students now with this huge population surge, or their records were destroyed, and a lot of them now have to work because it's better if the children work, because foreigners working in Syria is illegal, just as it would be in Canada for foreigners to come over and work. So, but with kids, they let them get away with it. Now, her home was kind of a hub of activity, because she'd been in city council in Baghdad, and she was doing similar things there, trying to solve people's problems. There were constantly widows coming through the home, people with disabled children. I was really shocked by the cancer rates, and I talked to 4 different medical professionals, and all of them said that the level of cancers, they've never seen anything like it, and especially among children. So she was often trying to help them people get money for medicines, operations, that kind of thing. And she had various people who would live at her place. She has 2 children and is married, but some people were living on her balcony. But she also decided to start a school for teenage girls, teaching English, because a lot of the girls aren't in school, and so they have to stay home. That's their choice. And so she wanted to give them a social outlet, and also to make sure that they continue their education even if they're not in high school. So this was the opening day of the school, and now there's mothers here as well attending with their daughters. And now she has 75 students, boys and girls, and she's running classes in her home and also in a neighboring apartment. So there are these kinds of stories of people that are giving hope. Lastly, I want to talk about my methodology. In other words, how I do this kind of work, and how what's worked for me. And essentially, I'm coming from a perspective of an independent journalist. I'm not coming in with an office on the ground, with fixers who are telling me what I should be doing as my story, or fixers who are doing my story for me. So I think it's very important to become informed before you go. That means reading a lot of books. It means developing a kind of working knowledge of one of the primary languages, if you can. It means joining listservs, reading newspapers from the countries that you're going to, becoming fluent in the issues that that concern them. This kind of thing has been invaluable to me. Oops. And making contacts before you leave. So that may be going to community centers that are concerned with the country that you're going to ahead of time, attending cultural events, contacting NGOs that work with those countries. For instance, going to do the refugee story, I contacted Refugees International, talked to their research field worker who had just been there. He set me up with about 5 different people. And even if only a couple of them I managed to make contact with, it's very helpful. And also, one of the things to remember is that when you're coming into a country, it's so much better if you're coming through someone that they trust. So you're introducing yourself through someone else that is already known. And I always like to have as many email addresses and phone numbers as possible before arriving on the ground. And these are the people who can also take you inside the culture. Once you're there, finding the nodes or the hubs, finding the people who know everyone. And there's always those people. I mentioned the woman from the city councilor from Baghdad. She knew everyone. She was one of those people. Journalists can be very good. I'm talking about local journalists. They know who the players are. Aid workers, aid associations, research groups, just talking to as many people as possible to expand the tree of contacts that you have. Also respecting the cultural norms of where you're going. So this may mean, in some cases, that you have to wear the scarf, the hijab, something like this. I don't think there's any point in being try-hard and really going overboard and wearing the full garment or something like that. But to an extent, respecting the culture so you're not making a lot of faux pas.